out today with my friend Brian Slagel, the owner, chairman, CEO of Metal Blade Records. Heavy metal, music, hockey, how'd they play into your life?
Kind of both around the same time. I grew up a big sports fan. I played baseball since I was 5 years old and played all the other sports. Never really got to play organized hockey because we didn't have enough money. But I really got into music when I was 11 years old. Somebody played me Deep Purple's Machine Head record, and I'm like, what is this? And completely led me down that path, but still always paying attention to sports.
Those heavy riffs changed everything for you,
That was it.
Right? Metal Blade Records, one of the premier record labels for metal. You chronicle this in your book for the sake of heaviness, but there was a band called Metallica involved?
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, I was a huge fan of something called the New Wave of British Heavy Metal, which was this big scene happening in England. Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Saxon, and a bunch of other bands came out from that scene. And I realized there's nobody's paying any attention to these bands in LA. Like there's Motley Crue and Rad and a bunch of stuff happening. And so I got the idea of putting together a compilation album of local LA heavy metal bands. And then my friend Lars called up and said, hey, if I can put together a band, can I be on your record? I said, sure. And that ended up being Metallica. And it kind of rolled from there.
Well, things turned out okay for them.
They kind of did all right.
It's done okay.
Kind of did okay.
Yeah, and well, it's cool too. I mean, you've maintained your friendship with those guys too. And over 30 years later, at Metal Blade, some of the bands that you've had on your roster, other bands that were really big, Slayer, right? Some other ones maybe you could just go over that you've had and currently are on the label.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, Slayer started out with us. We did the first 4 records. A whole bunch of, I mean, if you're into heavy metal, bands like Amon Amarth, and Cannibal Corpse, and Guar.
When you were growing up, when you're getting into hockey, what were the teams that you followed back then?
As a little kid, I was really into Penguins. So once I found out there was a hockey team named the Penguins, they became my teams. Being in LA, the Kings were the team, even though nobody cared or knew they existed. So Kings and Penguins have been my 2 teams up until I moved to Vegas, basically.
And your timing was perfect for it, right? With the Golden Knights coming in. What was your thoughts when this team came to town?
I thought, look, if we get a team here, it'll be fun to see the other teams come in. You know, if they're decent enough, they can be competitive, but you know, maybe they'll be bad enough that we'll get a really great draft pick at the first round. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this team goes crazy. I mean, unreal. I've never, being a hockey fan since the 70s, I've never seen a story like this before. I've been to Stanley Cup games, the Kings won the Cup and the Penguins have won the Cup, but I've never experienced something as amazing as that first season here with the Knights, because nobody expected it.
No.
And you go in every game, it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, and the whole city gets behind it.
You've been involved, though, not just with being a fan of hockey, you've actually been involved with sponsoring it too, and the Western Professional Hockey League, the Central Hockey League. Those are some wild times in minor league hockey, right? Like you've seen a lot, honestly.
Yeah. I've melded my 2 passions of, hockey is my therapy, really. That's my get away from music and just relax. But I've kind of dabbled in some stuff there. I was part owner of a team in the Central Hockey League called the Lake Charles Ice Pirates. Also was involved in the El Paso Buzzards, and we also did sponsorships with Bakersfield Condors, San Antonio Rampage, Wichita Thunder, Tulsa, a whole bunch of different places. Miami Manatees.
I want to ask you specifically about the Knights, though. When you go to the games, the game presentation of it, it's unique, it's different, it's Vegas. What do you enjoy most about it?
Well, yeah, so I've seen games in every NHL city, almost every NHL arena. There's a couple new ones I haven't been to yet. I've seen, oh gosh, I don't even know how many, hundreds of games in minor leagues, games in Europe, games everywhere, World Cup games, World Junior Hockey games. I've never had an experience like what the Knights do. You guys out here that have been to games appreciate that, because it's better than anybody else does it in really the world, I think.